the underworld moved in to crush the Empire and the Rebellion in a single stroke. After The Empire Strikes Back and before Return of the Jedi, there was a time when heroes and villains alike lived in the shadows of the Empire.
Hello, I'm Brian, and welcome back to Drink the Video Games. In 1994, a group of decision-makers for Lucasfilm and their licensees got together for a group of closed-door meetings. The agenda? Reinvigorate a film franchise that hasn't released a major motion picture since 1983. Oh, and do all this without a movie. So the think tank puts their heads together and comes up with one of the most ambitious multimedia crossover projects the world had ever seen. There would be books, toys, comics, soundtracks, and yes, of course, a video game. Today we're talking about Shadows of the Empire.
Dash! What are you doing here?
Princess Leia asked me to watch your back, Luke. Good thing she did. Because while I was sniffing around in Mos Eisley, I overheard that gang talking. They worked for Jabba the Hutt and they had orders to kill you.
But something's not right. I have a feeling someone else is pulling Jabba's strings. Where's Leia now?
Leia's trying to find answers, Luke. She thinks by infiltrating Black Sun's spy network, she'll find out who's behind this.
In Shadows of the Empire, you take on the role of mercenary smuggler Dash Rendar, and your mission is to help Luke Skywalker rescue Princess Leia from the clutches of the evil head of the Black Sun crime syndicate, Prince Shizor. We'll have to survive a battle against Imperial walkers on Hoth, search out Boba Fett, fight off the crime syndicate, and finally make our way to Coruscant to save Princess Leia. The year was 1994. 11 years after Return of the Jedi, and Star Wars is still popular, just not 1983 popular. There have been things keeping the galaxy alive, though, the video games, of course, but also the expanded universe books, and a few entries into visual media. 2 Ewok adventure films in 1984 and 1985, and the Ewoks and Droids cartoons in 1985 and 1986. And while the video games were certainly popular, and some of the EU book series garnered a dedicated fanbase, it was still an unknown what the market for Star Wars films was, because George Lucas had plans, but that's a story for a different day. So a meeting gets set, and takes place between Lucasfilm Publishing Director Lucy Autry-Wilson and Lou Aronica, the editor for Bantam Books, who comes up with the idea for this multi-platform licensing arrangement. Lucasfilm already had licensees set up: publishing, comics, toys, merchandising, and video games could be handled in-house through LucasArts. Now, it's hard to say exactly who all knew what George Lucas was up to, but it seems pretty clear that at least Lucasfilm insiders knew that the special editions would be coming out in 1997, and there was pretty good evidence that an entirely new prequel trilogy of films would be releasing after that. So to set the stage, 1996 seemed the perfect time to unveil this publishing crossover project to the world. Now it's just time to bring all of those departments into the fold and start planning something that had never been done before, a movie-type marketing blitz for a story without a movie. What we really need is somewhere to grab a cocktail to iron out the plan for this thing. Michaela from Drink the Movies is going to meet us to help with a cocktail, and we'll see exactly who all stumbles into this Star Wars cantina. Hello, Michaela. Thank you so much for meeting me for another Drink the Video Games episode. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
I am doing great, and I'm doing extra great because today I'm talking about Shadows of the Empire, which is a video game from 1996 and 1997. It came out on the Nintendo 64. Michaela, going to go out on a limb and assume that you never played Shadows of the Empire, but maybe you heard about Shadows of the Empire because imagine this. You walk into a bar, you have the head of Lucasfilm Publishing there alongside the editor for Bantam Books. You know, no big deal. They probably meet a lot, right? So you have them there. You have Dark Horse Comics is there. Marisa Saraband, the music label, is there at the bar. Kenner and Galoob, the toy companies, also there. Topps, trading card company, there. Nintendo flew in to be at the bar today. And LucasArts, who makes all of the Star Wars video games at this point, they're also there. Everyone is there for a meeting to meet us at the bar today because Shadows of the Empire was a multi-platform merchandising explosion onto the world. So you didn't play Shadows of the Empire, I'm guessing, but did you hear of Shadows of the Empire in 1996? It was a book, it was an album, it was comics, it was everything.
Yeah, I was in high school, and pretty much every boy I knew, and a couple of girls that I knew that loved Star Wars were all about this. I didn't have a Nintendo 64, so I was unable to play it even if I'd wanted to. However, I do distinctly remember going to a friend of mine's birthday party where a couple people spent the entire night being antisocial and playing it on their console in the corner of a room.
That sounds like my kind of party, to be honest.
Right? It does. It does. Yeah. So I remember peripherally this, and I'm so excited. I'm glad that you cover video games from all different times, because I imagine that this is quite nostalgic for you, because you and I are about that age. When things might have simpler times, and graphics were different, and the story arcs were different. But I had no idea that. I mean, you listed 87 different companies that came together to make this marketing phenomenon exist.
Yeah, that's right. The whole project for Shadows of the Empire basically existed to reinvigorate Star Wars as a brand, because the next year we'd have the Star Wars special editions release, and then just 3 years after that, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, would release. So this kind of laid the groundwork for all of that stuff to happen, and Shadows of the Empire was a big deal. I also didn't have a Nintendo 64, so I never played the game either until I play it after this episode. I'm going to be playing it over on YouTube, but I did read the books. I read a couple of the comics. I had a couple of the toys, all that stuff. So I was definitely into Shadows of the Empire as a whole, for sure. So we've brought everyone to the Star Wars Cantina today. All of these executives are here to lay out some Star Wars groundwork. So I thought what we should do is we should mix up a cocktail that's going to pay homage to Shadows of the Empire. It's actually a cocktail that gets featured in one of the comic books here, the Luranian Brandy. Here on Earth, we call it the B&B. So, Michaela, B&B is delicious. Would you mind running through it? It's pretty simple.
Sure. It is pretty simple. We could have done this in a lobby bar, because it's 2 ingredients. You're going to need 1.5 ounces of brandy that you like, and 1.5 ounces of Benedictine. Now, Benedictine is it's an aromatic. It's like an aperitif, I would say, or a digestif. I don't really know what the difference is between those two things. Apparently they are different, but you can find it at a liquor store. It's got this really kind of beautiful, earthy yet floral kind of notes to it. It's very interesting. And people will use it for different cocktails, and of course the famous B&B. So it's equal parts brandy, equal parts Benedictine. You're going to put that in a glass, and you're going to drink it, and you're going to feel like an adult. It definitely looks like something that, an executive would be drinking in the corner of a bar, talking about how they're going to market, and bring back the brand of Star Wars. Right?
Chomping on a cigar,
right?
Talking about publishing initiatives, all those things.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. I thought that this was a good kind of approximation of the Luranian Brandy that we see in the comic book, Shadows of the Empire. So basically, Prince Shizor is the main baddie in this story, right? Runs the crime syndicate, Black Sun. And in this story, Princess Leia goes to visit him and becomes kind of like a prisoner under him. But when she arrives, she is offered Luranian Brandy, which is meant to be one of the highest, most thought upon liqueurs in all of the Star Wars galaxies. So very, very good stuff there. But she opts, Princess Leia, she wants to keep a level head, right? So she skips the brandy, probably a good call, and goes with the tea. And I thought that the Benedictine kind of reminded me of a tea, because it is, so many kind of ingredients kind of steeped into this liqueur, right? So it's a little bit sweet, it's a little bit savory, it's a little bit spicy. Benedictine is amazing, and it does kind of everything. And I imagine that is, pretty close to that tea that Princess Leia was drinking there. So a B&B makes up our Luranian Brandy. So definitely give one of those a try. Definitely give it a try if you're reading through or listening to the audiobook of Shadows of the Empire. Michaela, maybe you need to check out Shadows of the Empire when I play it over on the YouTube channel. It'll take you back to 1996, our high school days back there. We can pretend we had Nintendo 64s and we're sitting in the corner of a party, just playing Dash Rendar stories. So
that sounds awesome.
So thank you so much for joining me, Michaela. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So with that, let's get back to the Shadows of the Empire.
So we're actually going to be starting out with the Shadows of the Empire book, and this is one that was written by Steve Perry. Now, when you were talking about Shadows of the Empire, this is something which has really become kind of a moving force, almost like one of the movies in the trilogy.
Right. It's everything except the movie. It's this year's multimedia project from Lucasfilm. And for years, Lucasfilm has had great success in putting out books and comic series and video games all about different parts of the Star Wars universe. And they thought, wouldn't it be really neat to focus on one story, to have all of these things focused on one story? And that's the genesis of Shadows. It all starts with the novel by Steve Perry, and it's a very exciting, very cinematic novel. It's everything but a movie, actually.
Without a film to base all of the spin-offs on, the book becomes the main focal point of the project. The decision gets made to set the story in between The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, an idea from the brain of LucasArts' John Knowles. His thinking was that there was a lot of unknowns for this time period. Han's frozen in carbonite, Darth Vader's building the second Death Star, Luke's training to be a Jedi. There's a lot of interesting things happening in the galaxy at this time. Steve Perry is selected to pen the Shadows of the Empire novel, and honestly, it's a daunting task. Not only do you have to write an enjoyable story, but it also has to build a world of merchandise and promotions. That means all new character designs, new ships, action sequences that could be recreated in a video game. Perry is up to the task, though, presenting his 400-page first draft in only 4 months. The Shadows of the Empire novel is an insane kind of fun, and reads like an action serial adventure story, which is a pretty good argument for it being authentically Star Wars. The novel would release to the world on April 1st of 1996 and become a bestseller. The cover art for the novel, and therefore the whole project, is created by Drew Struzan, a living legend in the movie poster art world. And now with the novel completed, everyone else can get to work on their aspect of this project.
I had worked with Lucasfilm so much. I had done the Radioland Murders after Young Indy, which was a pet project of George's. Movie not a lot of people saw, but it was just tremendous amount of fun for me because it was a 2-hour radio play. It took place in real time. So I had to write 2 hours worth of kind of period late 1940s radio music in addition to underscore. And I just kind of finished that. And I was working with Lucasfilm a lot. Robert Townsend at Perez Saraban knew of the book that they were commissioning to write, and that ultimately it would be a video game. And he suggested to their head of marketing that, what about we commission a score to be written to the book? And it was such a kind of a wild, out there, weird idea that they took it to George, and he liked the idea. So that whole piece was conceived independently of the video game. I never saw anything or had anything to do with the video game. That happened after the piece was written.
The soundtrack would come next, composed by Joel McNeely, is based around the story told from the book. McNeely was no stranger to Lucasfilm, scoring episodes of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and 1994's Radioland Murders. McNeely does take a little bit of inspiration from John Williams, but by and large, he makes the score his own, even enlisting Ben Burt to write a poem, Da Werda Verda, that would be chanted in the composition. Recorded by the Royal Scottish National Orchestra and mastered at Abbey Road Studios, the compact disc version of the score would hit store shelves on April 23, 1996. Parts of the soundtrack would be implemented in the audiobook version of Steve Perry's novel, and for any of you audiophiles out there, Varisa Sarabande released the score on vinyl in 2020. After you've read the novel, you'll probably want to dig a little deeper into the story, and that's where Dark Horse Comics comes in. Dark Horse had taken over the Star Wars comics license from Marvel in 1992, and they were a perfect fit for what was planned in this project. The Dark Horse comic runs had shown a much greater sense of continuity than the original Star Wars comics created by Marvel. Ryder Wyndham, the editor for Dark Horse, suggests building the comic run after an unpublished story that had been written for the anthology series Tales of Jabba's Palace that would begin with Boba Fett immediately running into trouble on his way to deliver Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt. Written by John Wagner and illustrated by Killian Plunkett, issue number 1 of Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire, releases on May 7th, 1996. John Wagner had done a lot of writing up to this point, but had gotten his Star Wars comic start the previous year writing Star Wars Boba Fett, Bounty on Bar Coota. Killian Plunkett was a seasoned artist and would play a key role not only in the comic line, but establishing a lot of the concept art that would be used throughout the entire project. The comic series runs for 6 issues. In addition to the main comic line, the issues also get released in mini-print format with a bundled micro machine or a model kit. Some parts of the comics get reprinted in Nintendo Power magazine, and there were 2 special release comics that came packaged with some shiny new action figures from Kenner.
Prepare yourself for Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire. The evil Empire has struck back with a vengeance, and a new villain, the crime lord Shizor, schemes to replace Darth Vader as the Emperor's second-in-command. With Han Solo held frozen in carbonite by bounty hunter Boba Fett, it's the rebellion's darkest hour. Now, join Jedi warrior Luke Skywalker, hard-charging Chewbacca, and go undercover with heroic pilot Dash Rendar and his booming Outrider. But can Han Solo be freed and Shizor be stopped? Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire. Look for the authentic figures and vehicles from Kenner.
Beginning in May of 1996, you'd be able to find your favorite Shadows of the Empire character in action figure format. Bounty Hunter Chewbacca, Imperial Guard disguised Luke Skywalker, Boushh, Princess Leia, Prince Shizor, and of course, Dash Rendar. If you picked up either of those special release comics, you'd get Darth Vader and Prince Shizor, or IG-88 and Boba Fett. There were vehicles too. Boba Fett's ship, the Slave One, came with a frozen in carbonite Han Solo. A pretty cool little swoop bike came with the appropriately named Swoop Biker, and Dash Rendar's Outrider, figures sold separately. And thanks to Prototype Archives, we know that there was a prototype made and advertised for Prince Shizor's Virago ship, but ultimately it was never released. The action figures are pretty cool, and if you are into Star Wars collectibles, they are definitely worth checking out. But if Shadows of the Empire is really going to make the splash Lucasfilm had been betting on, we'd better get the game ready because the Nintendo 64 launched in Japan on June 23rd, and will be hitting store shelves in North America on September 29th.
Okay, our second game this week is Shadows of the Empire, again by LucasArts, only this one's for the Nintendo 64.
This is cool because it takes place between the movie The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, so you get to relive the Battle of Hoth.
Right, this time you play as Dash Rendar, that was him, a mercenary hired by Princess Leia to help the rebels and free Han Solo from the clutches of Boba Fett.
Now to succeed, you're going to have to master 3 different gameplay mechanics.
First, you're going to have to learn to pilot your ship through some tricky airspace.
Right, and since you have to frequently bail out of your craft, you'll also have to master getting some things done on foot.
When you're on foot now, you can switch between the first-person perspective and a more dynamic sort of over-the-shoulder view.
Yeah, that's cool, but there's still more, class, because sometimes you're just fending off TIE fighters while your droid counterpart drives your ship.
Not as easy as it sounds.
Yes, and technically speaking, Shadows of the Empire is superb. LucasArts really took advantage of the Nintendo 64's processing power.
Agreed, the levels are huge, and the gameplay is just plain fun.
Okay, quick review. It's Shadows of the Empire, available exclusively on the Nintendo 64, and we're going to recommend that you grab a copy for yourselves, kids. Anything to add, Invisible Guy?
Oh yeah, hey, use the Force! See you next week!
Class dismissed.
So when the decision was made to feature a Shadows of the Empire video game as the capstone of this multimedia project, sights were set on the unannounced, unnamed, and unknown new Nintendo console. We now know the console as the Nintendo 64, but at the time, project leader and senior programmer Mark High Hutchinson and team had no idea what they were even programming for, or if it would work. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to 1994. In those initial planning meetings, I mentioned John Knowles was the driving factor in getting the story to take place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which makes sense. John knew Star Wars video games, playing a part in every LucasArts Star Wars title to date. So he understood the assignment and becomes the game designer and lead artist and animator for Shadows of the Empire. This game needed to be big though, monumental, and it needed to capture the spirit of Star Wars in a profound way. After all, it's a brand new Star Wars story on what's likely going to be the biggest video game console launch in history, with the marketing budget of a feature film behind it. So should it be a space combat game like TIE Fighter? Yes. How about an arcade-like shooter, just like Rebel Assault? Also yes. Maybe a first-person shooter in the vein of Dark Forces? Yes, yes, yes. Shadows of the Empire can be all of those things, because what Nintendo is promising with this new piece of hardware, the team can definitely do all of that and then some. In September of 1994, the team begins work on the game. Now, Nintendo had made some very lofty promises about the technological abilities of its new system, but there weren't any workstations available or even prototypes for the LucasArts team to test out. What they did have, though, was a Silicon Graphics Onyx supercomputer. What's that, you might ask? It's an extremely high-end computer graphics machine. High-end enough that these were the computers ILM used to make Jurassic Park. And an assurance from both Silicon Graphics and Nintendo that the new Nintendo 64 would have the same capabilities of this high-end machine. And it turns out, they were right. Nintendo nailed the specs, so porting the game from the $140,000 supercomputer to the $200 Nintendo 64 was actually a piece of cake. Something that was trickier, though, was using its new controller. Now we know that the Nintendo 64 controller is wild, with its 3 arms and terrible little thumbstick, but the team at LucasArts didn't even have the benefit of that. What they got was a modified Super Nintendo controller with a prototype analog stick and an extra Z button, and a non-disclosure agreement, meaning anytime they wanted to test the controller, they'd have to stick their hands into a cardboard box to use it, so no prying eyes could see what was happening inside. Development carries on for the team at LucasArts, having the first level, the Battle of Hoth section, completed in just a few short months after beginning work on the project, and the development team is using the Jedi engine from Dark Forces to program the game's first-person shooter sections. Things weren't all smooth sailing for the dev team, though. There had been a mountain of concept artwork done for the Shadows of the Empire project, including 3 vehicle designs by Lucasfilm legend Doug Chang, and character designs by Lucasfilm's Mike Butkus. The superstar art team of Tim and Greg Hildebrandtt created the artwork for the series of Topps trading cards. LucasArts' John Knowles has created concept art for the game environments, plus there was also art and design from Kenner for the toy line, plus all the artwork that Killian Plunkett had done for the comic series. So anytime anyone needed to pull an art asset, they'd have to check to see if it had already been created, or sometimes, like in the case of Dash Rendar, which version they should be using. And they'd have to run any changes by Alan Kausch, who is the Lucasfilm continuity editor for the project. So after checking with everyone, the LucasArts art department and animators were still having a tough time getting their ideas from concept sketches to illustrated and lining up what was in their heads with the polygons that the Nintendo 64 would be rendering. So a lot of trial and error had to be done to get the art style just right for the game. And the original idea was to do motion capture to get the movements for Dash Rendar and crew over at Industrial Light and Magic. I mean, it's ILM, they can do it, right? Well, yes and no. They had the equipment and the soundstage, so while the motion capture does get recorded, unfortunately it's unusable. The team just couldn't make all of the points of the motion capture match up with all those little polygons inside the Nintendo 64, so Dash would have to be hand animated, which was doable, but definitely added to the workload for the team as the holiday season quickly approached. The other consideration was the music. LucasArts predominantly made games for PCs, so MIDI, the musical instrument digital interface, was the standard there, but it didn't sound all that great coming through television speakers, so the decision gets made to sacrifice some of the game data to use a compressed digital version of John Williams and Joel McNeely's score. In total, there's about 15 minutes of music on the game cartridge. How did they fit it all on there? Nintendo let LucasArts have an extra 4 megabytes of storage on their Nintendo 64 cartridge, for a total of 12 megabytes.
Yeah, but what do you got for us today?
This is Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. It's available on the Nintendo 64, and really, it's perhaps one of the coolest video games I think that's ever been released. I mean, it puts you inside the Star Wars universe in a game that's just so realistic, it's really like you're playing the movie.
Well, just in case anybody doesn't know, you are our ace video critic. Right? And games critic. You do a great job of this.
Thanks. Yeah, I read a column for the San Francisco Examiner and also edited a website called Video Game Spot on the World Wide Web.
So you know about this stuff. Now, tell me about the particular details of this game.
This game, it retails for about $80, and it's called Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. It just came out about 2 weeks ago, and you should be able to find one if you look hard enough amidst your local video game retailer. It's available on the Nintendo 64, which stores are just getting more shipments of now, a system that retails for $199. It's really perhaps just the most realistic video game system that's ever been put out.
With the winter deadline looming large, and the Nintendo 64 hitting store shelves, LucasArts was down to the wire to get the game into production. Long days became long nights, became long weeks. But the cartridge gets printed, and on December 2nd, 1996, it releases to a very, very eager world. Shadows of the Empire would be the 8th game released for the brand new Nintendo 64 in North America. So if you were able to get your hands on the new Nintendo, this game was high on your wish list, becoming the second highest selling game on the system in 1997 with over 1 million units sold. Plus, the game would be ported to the PC, releasing in September of 1997. The reviews for the game were definitely a mixed bag, and that's because the game tried to be everything. So while it wasn't the best Star Wars space sim, and it wasn't the best Star Wars first-person shooter, it wasn't even the best Star Wars on-rails arcade shooter, it was the best Star Wars Nintendo 64 game. It highlighted everything the new gaming console could do, and it reminded the world of all the things it loved about Star Wars. It had fun characters, cool ships, it let you relive the Battle of Hoth, and it rounded out this crazy marketing initiative set forth by Lucasfilm 2 years before the game launched. The 20-person LucasArts team had done something truly incredible, and brought to life the story of Dash Rendar, the mercenary smuggler, and gave us an all-new Star Wars adventure on an all-new gaming platform that they literally had to program and game test inside of a cardboard box.
all new adventures and all new wonders enthrall you in the best-selling Star Wars novels. Follow all the characters you love as the adventures continue. Read a Star Wars novel today, and the Force will be with you. Don't miss the Star Wars novel, Shadows of the Empire. Available in paperback, wherever books are sold.
So, the Shadows of the Empire marketing blitz has concluded, and Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope Special Edition would release on January 31st, 1997, a mere 60 days after the launch of Shadows of the Empire for the N64, and that movie would gross $160 million worldwide. But the real question is, did the multimedia project succeed? Absolutely. Even though Shadows of the Empire faded into the shadows of the special editions, and were a complete afterthought by the time Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, gets announced, this project was undoubtedly a success. The novel was a bestseller, spending 6 weeks on Publisher's weekly bestseller list. The comic run finishes as a top 100 seller for the year. And the video game helped launch a new console, selling in total around 2.6 million copies for the Nintendo 64. Plus, the tools it designed and the lessons learned by the LucasArts team would lay the foundation for the next Nintendo 64 game, Rogue Squadron.
I've seen pulse cannons and gladiator droids. I've seen Beggar's Canyon and Imperial sewers. I've seen dead ends and infinite space. I've seen 360 degrees of tomorrow, and for once, live to tell about it. Because I've got the ultimate fighting machine.
It's hard to really grasp the size and scope of the Shadows of the Empire project. It had so many moving pieces, and somehow it all came together. And while the marketing efforts for Episode 1 would make this project look meager, I firmly believe that that was the real lesson of Shadows of the Empire. Sure, it was meant to reinvigorate the Star Wars audience, and it did, but more importantly, it created a playbook for Lucasfilm's marketing efforts over the next decade, as we saw Anakin Skywalker's story play out over the next 3 films. If you were a Star Wars fan in 1996, you heard about Shadows of the Empire. It was impossible not to. It was featured on QVC, on Nintendo commercials, at your local bookstore. Even the West End Star Wars RPG had a Shadows of the Empire sourcebook. It was impossible to miss, but miss it I did. Well, the video game at least. Sure, I read the novel, and in fact I still have it and go back to revisit this wacky nostalgia-fueled Star Wars romp every once in a while, but I never had a Nintendo 64, so the game blew right past me. Don't worry, I'll be checking it out soon and playing through it, so make sure you check out the YouTube channel for the upcoming playthrough. Also, make sure to let me know what your memories are with Shadows of the Empire. Did you have the Outrider from Kenner? Jealous. Read the novel? Play the game? Or did you mix up a Luranian Brandy to have as we revisited Dash and his adventure in a galaxy far, far away? Let me know all that over on my social media. It's at Drink the Video Games on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And if you want to support Drink the Video Games or Drink the Movies, our Patreon is the best place to do that. You get bonus episodes, cocktail chats, hangouts, and behind-the-scenes content. You can find that at patreon.com/drinkthemovies. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Drink the Video Games, but don't worry, I'll be back next month with another game from the world of Star Wars. Cheers.